What if you could build a business that gives you the life of freedom you deserve? What if you could find the secrets to marketing, leadership, customer service, and other aspects of business that help you exceed your goals? What if you could walk away from your business for 30 days and it never misses a beat? That's what this podcast is for, to help business leaders like you find freedom from the day-to-day grind and start spending your time doing the things you love. I'm Levi McClendon, and my co-host is Josh Taylor, and this is the Cheers to Freedom podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Cheers to Freedom podcast. I am Josh Taylor, and I am with my co-host, Levi McClendon. Levi, look good today.
Thanks. It's good to be here. How you doing, Josh?
I am doing great. Hey, our podcast is set up a little bit different today because we have recorded Jason Wilkie from Magis Wash. And we just got into a conversation with him. He came on to do the podcast, and we just started talking. So I just started recording, and so our intro is a little bit different this time. And so we're actually going to bring people into that conversation. So it might start off just kind of abruptly, but that's because we just started talking. I loved where the conversation was going, so I just pushed record and went for it. But before we do that, Levi, set us up a little bit of what we're talking about in this conversation with Jason.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It's kind of eye-opening to me of what they do in the first place. You know, when I first heard of Magis and saw it, Caleb Box and Blake DeWitt are also part of Magis Wash, and they kind of brought it to the space here and been doing some advertising and marketing. And they were on Clubhouse the other night. And so, I thought it was more about, hey, this training on site, like training your staff and managers and how to do things with the wash, which everybody needs. But the more that we dove into it, the more I understood this really isn't about that. It's really about your people, and it's about training more of your managers and this mindset of what people believe. And it's really holds true. There's a lot of different philosophies about this, Josh, but it's really what you believe you can conceive, right? Like you can actually do it, but it's this mindset and this shift. So it's really interesting. And I think when you first start listening to this podcast, if you weren't in the car wash space, you really wouldn't know that's even what we're talking about, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of company, what kind of culture, this can relate to any of them. And I just think it's funny that we are literally having a podcast about car washes and getting this into the weeds on this type of training. So very good.
I think this is a really important subject that we're talking about. And Jason, we just kind of let him go and just talk through. We really wanted him to talk about what they do, but he really talked about the solutions that they solve and kind of some of the solutions of how they solve them. And this is stuff that you and I talk about all the time that is not just missing from this industry, but is missing from a lot of industries that, especially people that work with young people. So in the car wash industry, they employ a lot of younger people, and figuring out what it is that motivates the younger generation. And it's not what you think it is. It's not more money.
It's not their paychecks. It's really not.
Even
we talked about tables. This before. No, not anymore. I used to have those back in the day. It was kind of cool. Or the Jaegerator. It's not about that anymore. But it's about, it really is about culture. But one thing that stood out to me in this podcast is the responsibility that we have, that the owners have for their people. And Jason talks about what, these employees will take home, right? And how that affects them. And it is our responsibility as business owners and as operators to know what type of influence that we have on our people. And the other thing, Josh, that the car wash space is really trying to get out there is like, this is a career opportunity, right? I think you go back 3, 5, 10 years ago and people, it's a job, right? Okay, I got a load, I got this and that. But man, people are really making this career opportunity because of the growth, because of the expansion, because of the opportunities here. And I think things like this really can help shift that mindset. And if you go through this training where these guys are like, hey, I'm more than just this, I can actually be this, and I can climb within this organization and actually have a career in the car wash space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, without further ado, we are going to jump into the interview, take everybody into our conversation with Jason Wilkie from Magis Wash. Enjoy.
Awesome.
We've been at this for 18 years. We've been all over the world, quite frankly. I mean, I've taught from Australia to UK to Mexico to Canada. I mean, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. And I grew up as an entrepreneur. In fact, I've never had a job. And people look at me sometimes, they're like, "How have you never had a job?" And I'm like, "Believe me, most of the time I don't think it was worth it." But that's the life. And one of the things when I got involved in this business, we had a pretty successful consulting firm that we sold back in 2008, 2009 timeframe, and it was big. I mean, we had multiple partners. We had 35 people involved in that business, plus some ancillary consultants that helped, and it was very white collar, very high end. I mean, seven-figure engagements, quite frankly. So Caterpillar, Boeing. Um, Large hospital systems and really working with them on culture. And one of the things that kind of bothered me all along is, I've been very successful in the fast food space just because I came from it. So it's almost like if I were doing this and I had been a car wash person and now I'm doing this, that was kind of the track for me. I was a Little Caesars franchisee when I was just a little kid and thought I knew everything, didn't know anything. And I think what was fascinating is as I got into this higher end consulting, that part of that was just a mission on trying to figure out, you know, I think people are tired of the idea that it worked for me, so it'll work for you. And what I was really passionate about was how do we peel that onion just a little bit further, and can we back up everything that we say and everything that we do by research? So we don't offer a whole lot of opinion. We do know what works, and we do know that there's a process and a sequential order that things need to happen when it comes to culture and leadership. But it's not opinion based. So the research that we leverage really comes from guys like Dr. Al Bandura out of Stanford University. He's like the Michael Jordan of cognitive psychology. We work with Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit. You've probably heard of that, or,
Yep.
or
Right.
familiar with that. Carol Dweck, Marty Seligman at University of Pennsylvania. He's like the founding father of positive psychology. And when I say we work with, like we know these people, we communicate with these people to make sure that anything that we do or deliver is accurate. And then so that's kind of like on the how the mind works and the psychology part. And then the rest of it is just 18 to 20 years of proven practice and kind of figuring it out. How does this whole people thing work? But what really bothered me was, how do you bring this to a guy that has two or three Little Caesars? How do you bring this level of information to, Ryan Blanchard, for example, a guy that has a couple of car washes. And that, I think that's always been a challenge. And quite honestly, COVID has changed that. For us,
Right.
we never really thought we could do this virtually. We never
Mhm.
thought that we could scale this in such a way that it would work. But technology's changed. I mean, look, we all have good microphones now. I mean, you can set up a studio in your house. It's ridiculous what you can do from a remote
Yeah.
environment. And then as long as you kind of create it and make it engaging, it really works. And as I was alluding to earlier, I mean, our management academy is selling out almost every single month, and we just started it. It's just quite phenomenal how that's happening. And the other thing is, there's a lot of research around how people learn. And 90 minutes, 90 minutes to 2 hours is about it. So I know that's
Mhm.
about it for me on a Zoom call or any sort of a virtual environment. But people learn better if you give them smaller chunks over time than they do going to a seminar for a weekend. And we always laugh about kind of the seminar, and people go, "Well, is this motivation?" I'm like, "Look, motivation, there's two types of motivation. It's really important you understand both." And the motivation where you go to seminar and rah 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 and you come back is really effective until you come home and your wife left you and your dog peed on the carpet, and it's like, this is all for naught. So you got to really understand that. And through this, there's a learning model called AGES, AGES, where it shows that these smaller chunks over time works way more effectively. And we've had probably our best implementations in the last 2.5 years than we ever have.
Well, I love, like, again, the silver lining of COVID is this. Like, it has catapulted us into an acceptable place of meeting virtually, right? And so even in our business with these car wash owners, like they all know how to Zoom. Like everybody,
I know, right?
and we're establishing relationships like this way more and doing it from home. I was never meeting with any of the owners, even prior to car washes. You come from Little Caesars. Little Caesars used to be one of our customers back in the day through texting, and so in Arizona. So we used to have several of them, and but even back then when we were doing, I never met with anybody. I didn't know anybody face to face, and so this is really, and even in the the car wash space now, we go to these shows and, hey, Jason, what's up, like, hugging guys, and it's really, people have embraced it, and they've embraced the kids crying in the background and the dogs barking. It used to be, if you were going to do this, like, it better be like professional, set up,
Yep.
dialed in, and now, like, oh, sorry, that's my dog, or that's my baby, or whatever the case is. So it's really opened up opportunity for all of us. And so I'm glad to see people embracing it, and obviously getting together is still really, really good and powerful. But this is definitely, and I agree with you, these chunks of information. Jeremy, my partner, the COO, who's been my partner for about 8 years in this space. And Josh, the book. I always forget the name of the book. It's a habits book or something. Anyway, he keeps saying, it's
high performance habits or something like that.
What I can't remember what it is. It might be, but he talks about just 1% a day, and I think that goes along with what
habits,
atomic habits. And that goes along with, to me, is these chunks over time. It's being consistent. It's showing up every day, and taking little by little, and having these little wins, because that's much easier to sustain than these emotional, roller coaster highs. You go, it's the rah. I grew up in a Christian home, going to Christian camps. Man, you go to these camps and it was on fire and it was amazing. And then you come back to life and you're like, how do I bottle this up? And how do I consistently live this way? I don't know that you can. It's really, really difficult. So I think there's got to be this steady path to go on.
One of the things we teach people is you have to go from admiration to assimilation. And this happens to me every single week. I'll hear something amazing, right? Or I'll be at church myself and I'll listen. I'm go, okay, this is something I need to integrate, and this is something I really need to pay attention to. This shook me in such a way.
Right.
And then I'll go home and I've got to make lunch, and then I've got to do this, right? And it's like all of a sudden,
yes,
all that good information is completely gone. And, the other thing with information is it's all about application, right? So information is meaningless unless you
apply it.
And we're actually seeing that in, throughout this management academy. And it's really cool because I think we have 2 people that are from Canada. One is from BC. And then we've got people from Florida to California. We've got several California folks involved. And it's just really, really neat to see these people come together. But then each week they have marching orders. So there's like an accountability partner. They're creating these relationships with other managers to talk about their problems. And then every week they've got to come back and kind of present what worked, what didn't, and we just have fun with it. It's kind of like, okay, well, go experiment. I mean, these employees sometimes, experiment, see what works, see what doesn't. And, just kind of.
Jason, we've talked to a few of our customers about, going through what you guys do and your program, and they have used the words that it's a game changer for their business. Yeah. Why do you think they're saying that, based on the content that you guys are teaching and how you're teaching it?
Yeah. So people are people first, and we need to remember that. And there are certain things that have to happen in order for us to change, in order for us to grow. And just to keep it in really simple terms, whether it's in fast food or car dealers where we do a lot of work, we're finding the same is true in car washes. People come from all different walks of life. And at the end of the day, it really does boil down to, what do they believe is possible for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can promote you to a leadership position, but if deep down you don't believe you're a good leader, I can promote you to, a general manager of a car wash, but if you don't believe that you're capable of doing that, or you don't believe that you can handle the responsibility, or you're easily stressed out, or any of these things. So that is all kind of like root cause. And there's a term for that called efficacy. And don't worry, I had to look it up myself. But this is the work from Dr. Bandura out of Stanford University. And basically, efficacy is a person's perceived belief. So it's a perceived belief in what you can cause. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's all about, how do you perceive what you're capable of doing? Do you have what it takes to pull it off? And the reason that efficacy is so important, it's really the foundation of all our work. So yeah, you can hire people to come in and teach you how to do communication, and we do that. And you can hire people to teach you to come in and how to be a more effective communicator, and we do that. But if the efficacy beliefs are low, then you're just putting band-aids on a more serious issue. So we really have to treat the human being first and let them understand, what is it that holds me back, and how have I been holding myself back for all these years? And then once I can unfreeze these old beliefs, these old habits, then I'm able to have breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And so we follow a very, particular model in how the human mind works, all research based. But that's where we start. Even when I work with CEOs, we start there, because I've got to lay the foundation. And the easiest way to think about it is, if you put an Android app on an iOS app, or on an iPhone, what happens?
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So we have this operating system that's in there, and you can put communication and conflict resolution, and you can put all this in there. But if the operating system doesn't match, then it's not going to be nearly as effective. It's not that it won't be effective, but it won't be nearly as effective in that regard. So
yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that limiting beliefs is a real thing, and their managers are dealing with it, as well as themselves as the owners are dealing with these limiting beliefs that are holding them back. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, I mean, even the starting premise. I mean, and we'll get real technical, and when we're teaching it, I won't do that today. But even just the idea, like the psychological concept of lock on, lock out, right? And if you lock onto there's no good employees, your brain actually functions in such a way to verify that which you believe.
That's good.
So just the notion that there's no good employees is gonna be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you're gonna struggle finding employees. Just something as simple as that. So that's just a simple turn where you can reframe how you're thinking. So what we do is we really help people think about what they're thinking about. And then once they understand what the implications are of that, then they can open up new ideas and new possibilities. And it's like, for example, so going back to the efficacy thing, what we found fascinating over the years about that is, you can be a real visionary leader, and most leaders and entrepreneurs, they're not there by accident, right? Like, they knew they wanted freedom of time, they knew they wanted freedom of money, and they're pretty much going to get there.
Right.
But what happens is, as an organization grows, it's not what you believe, it's what you can get others to believe. Right?
That's good.
And the number of times where I've seen leaders that have had these big, bold visions, and we're going here, and then the lead leader goes plays golf that afternoon. And what's everybody do at the office? To heck we are. We ain't doing that. We don't have the resources. We don't have the money. We don't have the people. We don't, like, they will. So they're constantly backing down the goal. And that is a efficacy. There's collective efficacy. So what is our efficacy collectively as a team? And when they start backing down goals and coming up with the reasons why it won't work, really that's an efficacy issue. So that's what makes us pretty unique and different, is that we really build the efficacy of the individual first. In fact, we don't even allow companies to get into that vision and vision casting, vision discussion until they go through our core curriculum, because they're going to sell themselves short.
You mentioned managers. You said you've worked with CEOs, Jason. So right now in these classes, you said you guys, we're pretty new into this, right? You're in your first one still. You're getting ready to launch the second one, I think, in March. Who is attending these? Who should be attending these, and why?
Yeah, we just felt like there was a huge need to develop managers, but that is definitely not our core business. It's really meant to support owners and operators. And our core business is really digging in. Well, let me kind of back that up a little bit. We kind of have three different buckets, if you will. So bucket number one would be, hey, I've got this business. I always call it, we're in the good to great business. And those are companies that are pretty good at what they're doing. They're not broken. They're not circling the drain financially. Like, they're pretty stable. They're pretty good. They've got a decent enough leadership team in place, and they're ready to scale the business. They hire us to be much more custom, a much more bespoke solution in terms of culture. And we measure it. We have a scientifically validated tool to measure culture. We get a gap analysis of how they stack up against the best in the database, but then we also will get a gap analysis of the vision that they're trying to accomplish. So measurement is key. That's very consultative. You cannot, depending on the size of the organization, you really can't shift culture in under 12 months. I mean, typically it's 18 to 24, because culture, when we can get into this later, is really driven by leadership, and there has to be behavior change in order for the culture to change. And so that is kind of something that people have to wrestle with. But really, that consultative culture. So when we've gone into Boeing and Caterpillar, or Nick Saban and U.S. Olympic swim team, I mean, we've worked with a lot of those. I mean, I'm working with Atlanta United currently, our local soccer team, all around culture. So it's multi-month, multi-year engagement, and they're just saying, look, we're really good, but we need that lever to go to great. And there's a very specific process to follow, a scientifically proven process of, if I'm going to move culture, how do I do it? And how do I create this amazing culture, which is really driven by amazing leaders. So we've got to grow amazing leaders. So that's kind of our consultative relationship. The other one, and going back to my Little Caesar days and some of the frustrations around really high-end 7-figure type consulting, and it's not all 7 figures, I don't want to scare people, but how can we create a solution that works best for people like OpSpot? You got 9 people, you got 4 people in your C-suite, really critical, you're probably going to grow. And so what we do is we have a coaching platform that is a year long, and most people renew and go further, but we meet every other week for 2 hours, and we're basically marching you with other owners. We're marching you through this process. So it's kind of like a mastermind group. But we're a bit more prescriptive than a lot of these groups. A lot of these groups, it's kind of like, okay, well, what are your problems and how do we help each other out? And we're a bit more prescriptive, so we're going to say, okay, well, here's how, we actually bring in a lot of data in that. And so we measure all the participants in terms of what's their individual mindset. We measure them as far as their leadership. And when we measure leadership, what we're after is how you lead impacts the mindset of others. So we want to understand where that's effective, where that's not effective. So your leadership style and how you lead, and going all the way back to your leadership philosophy, significantly impacts the mindset of people that work for you. So our instrument, the way we go about that is just totally different, but it works. And so it's kind of like this mastermind where you go through with other owners, but we really are installing the people and the culture system. So we just show you how to do it.
Awesome.
And then
go ahead.
lastly, like for the people that are in that group, that's where Management Academy, we have a Leadership Academy. So for the more line level employees, it's a way to support that mastermind group, so that if you've got a manager, or as you hire a new person, you can plug and play them into one of these academies. They're going to get the same language as you. They're going to get the same content as you. We're just not going to go as deep.
So it could be ongoing. Like you said, most of them renew. Is there an initial commitment then that they're doing a year long, and then it's a renewal, or what does that look like?
I mean, yeah, it just kind of depends. So we'll do 12 months. And then at the end of that, I mean, we just go deeper and deeper and deeper into more concepts. And then, what most people do is they just love the fact they're with other business owners and other entrepreneurs. I mean, I would say 50% of the benefit after the first little while is just the camaraderie, and being with one another. And, we're very passionate about leadership and character built leaders. That's kind of what we hang our hat on, is developing leaders with character, and trying to shift away from a self-focused leader to the other. And not just because it's the right thing to do, but because those companies make more money, and it's like not even close. So
for those listening to this podcast, you wouldn't think that we were talking about car washes, to be honest, right? So did you think, I mean, even the fact we talked about this earlier, that we're doing a podcast right now where we're engaging with those that are trying to grow their car wash businesses. It's a growing industry, a lot of consolidation, acquisitions, things like that. Did you think, Jason, and you haven't been in it for a super long time, from my understanding, what this probably wasn't on your radar for, hey, let's go into the car wash space. What are you seeing in the short amount of time in the space, and where you're able to come and actually move the needle?
Yeah, that's a great question. The car wash space isn't all that different from a lot of other industries because it's got people in it. And just about every problem that a business has usually boils down to people.
That's the truth.
It usually boils down to people. And I can tell you that our clients that we've been working with for quite some time are not experiencing the Great Resignation at all. In fact, if anything, people are lining up to their doors, and they don't have turnover issues. And the reason for that is it's all about the culture and the leadership, which really dictates the rest of it. People don't leave companies. They leave leaders, supervisors, and cultures. That's who they quit.
Right.
And this is more important now than ever because employees are emboldened because of COVID, right? Like, if anything, COVID kind of really set the stage for us. So there's this old economic model around people. And that the belief was that people are driven really simply by money, the accumulation of goods, perks, and with as little effort as possible. So that was kind of like always the premise of leadership. If you go way back, even to 77 in the Wealth of Nations, like this stuff started appearing 200 years ago. And then economists like Milton Friedman and other folks started to really hammer this home. And then you had this convergence. You guys look like you're my age. So it's kind of like between Milton Friedman and these other economists and Gordon Gekko, we all, with the movie Wall Street, we all felt like greed is good and you have to get the bottom line. And it's like Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of Human Depot, he said, well, really, if you take care of the employee, the rest takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. And I always question companies, how you spend so much time on the customer experience, but do you spend that much time on the employee experience? Mm-hmm. And it's not climate, it's not a bag of chips and it's not free soda. It's way deeper than that. Right. That's kind of like the Google effect stuff. But as far as, when it comes to turnover, developing the right kind of leader, and what that is it in real simple terms, it's want to versus have to. And if you're a leader that people want to follow versus have to follow, and they have to follow you because you have economic power over them and because of your title. And when they have to follow you, they're going to do what you ask, but they're going to do nothing more.
Right.
And when you're a want to leader, then they're going to go above and beyond, not because of your title, but because of who you are. And so the culture and the leadership, it all ties in together. And, I think what we do is we just kind of provide a roadmap. Culture is very complicated and it's somewhat complex, but we've got a lot of research, we can measure it. And then we just kind of provide this roadmap of, okay, we're going to go from here to there. And then typically our clients tell us what the ROI is. They may be looking for more employee engagement. They may be looking for less turnover. So we can hone in on those items of how we go about attacking that. But it really does boil down to kind of who the leader is and creating this want to versus have to. And most of us really never sit back and think about, Josh, Levi, like, where did you get your leadership philosophy? We read books, but what are those books based on? So if you really go back and it's really this economic human model, which is people are motivated and driven by money, the accumulation of money with as little effort as possible. And it turns out that that's not what motivates people at all. And if anything, COVID is showing us that people are turning down massive jobs so that they can stay home and have more time with the family, don't have to commute and beat themselves up in a car. So it's almost like, another added benefit for us anyway from COVID is it's kind of proving itself out. Like, okay, so money, like you have to have, we call them the hygiene factors. You've got to have a base salary. Like if you can't make your monthly expenses, then you're going to leave that job. But once that's covered, income becomes way down on the scale as far as what people care about.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I mean, this is stuff that, we agree with and talk a lot about. And I love that you guys have a program that focuses on this, because I do think that this is really important for the industry to understand. We're going to, in just a minute, let people know how they can connect with you guys. But for folks that are listening right now, what is the first step that they need to take to engage with you guys? Where should they start?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Check out our website, Magis. It's pronounced Magis, Magis wash.com. Highly recommend you contact Blake or Caleb, Blake DeWitt or Caleb Box. You know, they're working hand in hand with us on this effort. And then April 7th, we are launching the CEO group. Now there's a bit of a qualifier for that. But we will, you know, we like to have 2 to 3 people from an organization in that. I imagine we'll probably sell that out probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks after I think there's a convention coming up, so we might sell out in that. And we're keeping this one pretty small. We don't want more than 15 people in it because it is car wash specific. So whether you're in the industry or like yourselves, like you're in the industry, but you're not running car washes, you know, be very beneficial. And so what we'll do with that is walk leaders through this whole process, and it'll unfold in phases. So the first phase is what we call the champion's mindset, which is all based on neuroscience and psychology of how we think. How do we leverage how we think to get more and better results out of people, understanding motivation, et cetera. And then we move right into how do you build out the leadership team and get that fully aligned for future growth. And we'll measure the leadership team through one of our instruments. And then after that, we get into how do you become a leader people want to follow? And what does that look like? So that's kind of what the first year and how that unfolds. And again, that's 2 hours every other week. And then we do one-on-one coaching calls. I mean, we're basically here 24/7 to answer any questions. And we've got HR people with HR backgrounds. So if it's a HR question, we can answer that too. But
cool.
That's awesome.
Magiswash.com or magiswash.com, MAGISWSH.com. And then Levi, tell us, you've set up a keyword that people could text into, right?
Yeah, Magis, just MAGIS. You guys can text that into the short code 411365. That's 411365 and text MAGIS. And we'll shoot you all the information there, including the website. Jason, before that we wrap this up, who's the perfect customer for you? If I'm a car wash owner that I'm trying to build culture, trying to grow my business, who is the perfect customer for you that I need your business?
Yeah, good question. And thank you for asking that. So it's not a one size fits all kind of deal. So we have a lot of businesses that, you know, look, some owners want to be a bit hands off, but at the same time, they want their managers and leaders to really have the skills to be able to have that ownership mentality, to really act like an owner when they're on the site. So that would be our management academy. Like, it's just plug and play. You can put managers in there. We recommend the leaders involved because we are completely changing their framework and how they think. And so if the leader is a jerk, it won't work nearly as well as what we're saying. So it is important that the leaders involved. They don't have to be. So if you've got management, or, you know, a lot of these companies, we talked to a group out of Texas, they're growing like crazy. They're like, okay, we're going to have 100 in 18 months. And I just said, well, how in the world are you going to train these? Like, how are you going to develop them? And look, we're not training them about how to turn on the car wash and run the tunnel. It's more about the people side. How do you get, you know, our general managers, even in the QSR and other industries, they don't have the turnover issue either. So that's a big added benefit. If you're an owner, I would say with less than, let's say 14, 15 locations, then you're absolutely would want to get involved in our mastermind, because there's so much wisdom in that. It's really powerful. We're bringing you the best research in the world, literally. And then if you're a larger 15, 20, 30 locations and you're really worried about, okay, do we have the right culture in place? We've got a lot of plans. We're doing a lot of things. We need to make sure that that's right. And again, that goes back to the Android iOS example. Like the culture, you know, what I always tell people about culture is, guess what? You already have one. So the question is that you need to answer, is it an asset or liability? And how do you know? Because you already got one. So you need to figure it out. It's not like it doesn't exist. It does. And then based on that information, look, we don't know what we don't know. So we've got to do some discovery and really dig into that culture analysis to figure out kind of best path forward.
Yeah. And I was really, when you first kind of launched and I was kind of digging into this with Blake and Caleb and seeing what you were doing, when I first saw it, I was thinking, oh, it's more operational, right? Where, oh, this is training and we're going to, be hands-on and that's before I dug into this. That's just what came to my mind because Caleb and Blake they're very good operators and know what they're doing. I thought, oh, good. This is a package here that, and maybe a new owner is going to come in and really know how to run their wash. But the more that, and after I talked to you and the more I really understood what this was, that's really not what it is at all, but it's definitely something needed in the space. And what I see, Jason, what I've seen in the space myself is diversity, right? You got guys that have been in this space a very long time in the car wash, but you also have a lot of new people coming. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of private equity. There's a lot of new managers. There's these acquisitions, and a lot of them, some want to be hands-on, so they're like in the trenches with them, and they're managing and they're on it. And some want to sit behind the desk, not out the wash, but yet they want to still do well. They care, but they're not going to be those that are, completely, in the trenches with them. And so this type of program, to me, looking at this, man, the light bulb kind of went on. I was like, oh, this is different. This isn't that, but this is something in this space that I don't think that these guys, especially the old school guys that have been doing this a long time, that it was kind of like, hey, build a wash and people will come. Those days are kind of gone, including with our business doing the marketing and membership marketing and retention and things like that. It's all pretty new. And even us talking about websites, like, oh, I got to have what car wash needed a website and who had to handle reviews, right? So things are changing. Times are changing. And I feel like people need to get on board. If you want to grow, if you want to excel, and if you want to take your car wash to the next level, these are the things that these guys are going to have to do. So thank you for bringing this to the space. Well, and I think it's going to be really good for our car wash owners.
Yeah. And we can wrap it up, but it's people and we have a different lens because we're not industry niche. People are clamoring for good leadership. I mean, look in our politics, look at businesses. We had, look what happened at CNN where the guy, it's all around us all the time, and people are clamoring for this, and we really need it, and that's kind of our, what we're most passionate about is really helping people lead in such a way that they make this massive impact. Leaders really don't understand the responsibility they have in the lives that they can touch. And by doing it the right way, somebody that runs a car wash is going to go home and be a better mom. Right? Somebody's going to go home and parent different. And somebody's going to believe more in themselves than they ever thought possible. And we provide the tools for that. And that's really kind of like this big impact that we have. We just think, I think about our business on a much broader, much bigger scale with a much bigger reason behind it. It's not, we don't call it training. We don't call it programs. It's really a solution with sound tools to help you get from, where you are to where you want to be. But this idea around leadership, I mean, this is why people leave companies. They leave because of poor leadership.
Well, I think Justin Salisbury said it really well when we were interviewing him, on a podcast earlier. He said, we're a development company. We develop people. We happen to wash cars. And it's true. We're making an impact. People are making it. And me as an owner of a company, we're impacting other people's lives. And I know for me, I grew up playing sports, and the biggest thing, my takeaways from sports all through, high school and college, and it was what I learned being a part of a team. And those coaches put more into my life and have had a bigger impact today on my life than anything else in my life. And I feel like the same thing happens on the job, right? And in this industry is you said that really well. Like, these guys are having an impact. I'm a different person when I go home. I'm a different person because and it could be good or bad. It's not always good.
Yeah, right.
I could go home and be in a bad mood and treat people poorly and my kids poorly because my management sucked. How many people go home frustrated with their managers and their company, and that weighs on them, and then they take it home. But look at the reverse role there. If it's a good experience, man, you go home and I work for this. It's not even a job. Like, I get to go to work. I have this culture and this company that I love. And now that reflects back at home as well. So,
right.
Man, that's really good stuff. And I really encourage, others to really dig into this and know the response. It's really a responsibility, right?
100%.
It's a responsibility that they have to be the best they can be and put together the best they can for the culture of their company. So they're having a positive impact. So good stuff.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Let's leave with a really good story. So we've got a client we've worked with since, almost 2005. They're the largest Hardee's franchisee in the country. They're out of Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. They also are in the development business, own wineries. Like this is a conglomerate. You'd never know it. But this is a multi-billion-dollar industry or company. And a few years ago, they had this meeting, right, with the executive team. They said, you've got the private school, you've got the car, you've got the house, you're over at wherever, right? Like everybody's good here. Why are we doing this? And they went through this kind of soul searching process of this leaders that people want to follow. And what does this mean to be a character built leader? And what they discovered was they had a hangar full of airplanes, everything from a G6 all the way down to a hot air balloon. And they got rid of all of them. And now on any given day, they use this program called corporate chaplains. And on any given day, at any given Hardee's throughout the entire Southeast, because they own almost all of them, there's a chaplain in the store just in case somebody needs help that's coming through the drive-through or one of their own employees.
Wow.
So that to me is the responsibility of leadership.
Yeah. Right.
Like I'm willing to give up, $200 million worth of airplanes and take that money and put it into something that I may never see.
Yeah.
And, we have lots of stories like that, and it's powerful, and people do have a responsibility. And, a lot of times the leaders, they don't know what to do. And, so we've got to really, what we do differently too, is just dig into that leadership philosophy, and what that means is, what's your view of people? And because that view of people frames your leadership philosophy and leadership style, and how that's framed impacts how they perform.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway,
good stuff.
There's a lot to it. So I appreciate you guys having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. And I know this is a subject that we could dive really deep into. I mean, we could probably do 5 or 6 different podcast episodes just talking about this, because this is stuff that I'm passionate about too, and read a lot about, and have just developed in my own leadership. And I know Levi does too here at OpSpot. So, well, Jason, thanks for your time. Really do appreciate what you're doing, what you guys are bringing to the space. Levi, tell us again how to get the information with the keyword.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to start a new text to the number 411365. In the body of the text, type in MAGIS. That's Magis, right? Did I say that right? Magis.
That's correct.
And hit send, and we'll provide you with the right links, website, and whatnot that Jason's provided, and you'll be able to be in touch with Jason, Blake, and Caleb. So that's it. And don't forget, please subscribe. And we always got to remind you, got to tell people what to do, right? So down below, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We certainly appreciate that. And Jason, thanks again for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate it. Doing good stuff.
Thank you, Levi. I appreciate it. Josh, nice to meet you.